Hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Deep Dives at the Petersen Automotive Museum. Today we're going to talk about the collection's 1962 GAZ Chaika, the very car that used to belong to Nikita Khrushchev, Premier of Russia. At first glance, the 1962 Russian Chaika could be mistaken for a mid-1950s car. And in a way, you wouldn't be far wrong, because the car was inspired by 1955-1956 Packard in the front, 1957 Pontiac in the back, and 1956 Mercury on the side. So what you can tell is that the Soviet car designers were kind of looking to the Western world for their inspiration in building their finest and biggest vehicles. Now, in the Soviet Union, if you were a humble citizen, you could theoretically buy a lot of different cars. You could buy a Volga, you could buy a Chaparozza, you could buy Popieda, you could buy a lot of different things. Only the top Communist Party leaders or party favorites or preferred citizens got a Chaika. And even fewer got its sibling, its upscale ZIL. But the Chaika is really in the American idiom. It's a very, very large car, long wheelbase, and it debuted in 1958. And production started in 1959 and it ended in 1981. So all through the 1960s and all through the 1970s, they were making these. And in the mid-70s, they actually changed the design. In 1977, they came out with a new model that lasted through 1988. And that is a time when Gorbachev said, you know what? We're not going to give these things to the leaders anymore. We're going to be a country that is everybody's equal from now on. And so he got rid of all the dies and all of the means to manufacture the Chaika. So no more were built after about 1988. But in their heyday, during about the 22 years that they were in production, they made about a little over 3,000 of these, but only about half a dozen, some sources say 8, four-door convertibles. You could call it a convertible sedan, or you could even call it a parade phaeton. The whole idea behind this car was to see and be seen, because it wasn't intended to be driven around Moscow. It was intended to be driven in parades, very high-profile public events. The VIPs, you should usually stand here and grab onto the assist bar so that if the car jerked a little bit, maybe turn to the right or to the left a little bit too quickly, the important cargo in the back wouldn't fall over. And going inside the car, you're reminded of a Packard as well, because it's very American. The dashboard is very American. Even when you look to the left-hand side, it's got push buttons, which I am told and we believe were based on the Chrysler push button transmission selecting method. You got power steering, you got power brakes, you got power windows, all very unusual. Now, the regular Chaikas were all hardtops. The very first ones were two-tone, white and black. After that, they were all black, except for one white one that was made for the first woman cosmonaut whose radio name was Chaika, which in Russian means gull or seagull. And the reason it got its name was because Chaika is a higher end car than the Soviet Volga. And the Volga is a river. And the idea was that the Chaika, a gull, would always fly above the Volga, a river. So in terms of vehicle hierarchy, the Chaika was always above the Volga. In case you weren't reminded of how big it was, this car is absolutely huge. I would not throw it into a corner, but that's really not what it was meant for. It wasn't meant to be driven briskly or enthusiastically. It was meant to be driven very stately in parades and other ceremonial occasions. Now, this was the original property of Nikita Khrushchev, who actually had two built. one of which he gave ultimately to Yuri Gagarin, the first cosmonaut, the first Russian in space. He then, upon Gagarin's death, we believe that the car was returned to the Kremlin and then ultimately given to János Kadar, the leader of Hungary. Ultimately, both Chaika parade cars made their way to the United States by means of diplomatic connections. Mr. Petersen purchased this car around the year 2000 and added it to the permanent collection. It's just another one of the head of state vehicles that forms such an important part of the Petersen's automotive collection, because more than anything, when you were a leader of a country, the car that you wanted to be seen in was supposed to be the best of the best. It was supposed to exemplify your country's approach to transportation and putting your country's best foot forward in terms of production, in terms of technology, in terms of style and presence. Now, a lot of folks would look at this car and think, well, it's just a Packard. Somehow the Soviet Union got a hold of the Packard dies when Packard went out of business in Detroit after 1956. But that's really not the case, because there is nothing that's interchangeable with this than a 1955-56 Packard. It's completely different. If it were interchangeable, you could take a 1956 Packard fender and it would fit right on. It would bolt right into place, but it doesn't. So we can tell that they use the Packard just as a means of inspiration. They're also inspired by the American V8 engine. The engine is an overhead valve, American-style V8 the engine is an American-style overhead valve V8 of very ordinary specification, which was not a bad thing because you did not want a complicated engine in Russia where there wasn't a mechanic around every corner to fix your Chaika. Thank you, everybody, for watching another episode of Deep Dives at the Petersen Automotive Museum. We'll see you next time.